Joining us now, we are back on the 0 hour in the excitement and chaos that is live broadcasting here from New Hampshire on primary day. Joining us now is Ambassador Terry Shumaker. He is a former ambassador for the United States, been involved in presidential primaries since, what, am I reading this number wrong? 1968. You look too young for that.
That's correct.
And you look too young.
I was in college.
That's right. He co-chaired President Clinton's New Hampshire campaigns. Good work in '92. And I'm guessing I know who you support today. And a member of the 2005 DNC Primary Calendar Commission, where the idea of a national primary is briefly discussed. We could talk about that, actually. Ambassador Shumaker, thanks for joining us.
Well, it's great to be with you.
You know, I'm sorry I don't know the answer to this already, but where were you ambassador to?
Trinidad.
That's a nice assignment.
Yes, President Clinton was very good to me.
Yes, very, very good. Okay, now, one of the things that let's do something a little different before we talk about the primary.
Sure.
I mentioned on the show a little bit earlier that I was intrigued by the idea of a national primary, but in the end, I wasn't for it. And I could tell you why, but I'd be curious to know, what do you think of that?
A national primary is a terrible idea. The current system has grown over the past 100. This, as your listeners may not know, this is the 100th anniversary of the New Hampshire primary this year. A national primary would result in the candidate or candidates with the most money dominating, and it would be impossible for somebody like Howard Dean or Bill Clinton to run for president.
Jimmy Carter?
Jimmy Carter. He was from a small state and little known. When I was one of Bill Clinton's first 3 supporters in New Hampshire, and when I signed on, he was at 3% recognition, not 3% support, 3% recognition. Can you imagine how somebody like that would fare in a national primary where the whole country voted on the same day?
Jimmy Carter had the same experience. Bernie Sanders, you could argue. So
we keep alive the American dream that anybody can grow up to be president.
Yeah. And now here's my counter, though, because then on the other hand, and I agree with that's exactly what I said, Ambassador Shumaker. But the counter would be, okay, then how do we keep this dominance of New Hampshire, and I won't let these people hear me, but dominating the process? My idea was you throw all the state names in a hat and pull them out every year, and it's a different order every year.
Well, I have 2 answers to that. First of all, New Hampshire works because it's small, and it's manageable in scale. And the other thing that's very important is the predictability of it. People who are thinking about running for president, if you think about the run-up and all the talk about Elizabeth Warren, for example, is she going to run, whatever? And we have done it for so long now. Not that the people of New Hampshire are smarter than anybody else in the country, but we've been doing it for so long that there are certain things like this event today that are just sort of built in. A lot of regular folks in New Hampshire make this primary work. I'm talking about waitresses, people that park cars, the diner operators that are willing to have entourages come into their diner, etc. And I would point out, we do not pick presidents here in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is more like spring training. The last 3
presidents... That's a great analogy. I mean...
New Hampshire is a great place to see if you can put an organization together, if you can come up with a message that will resonate with people, if you can raise enough money to be viable, not millions and millions, but enough to run a respectable campaign, and whether or not people are interested in what you have to say. And we've had a lot of candidates that looked really good on paper come in here and totally fizzle. A good example of somebody who was world famous was John Glenn.
Right,
great guy.
I remember.
U.S. Senator from Ohio, first American to orbit the Earth, and extremely well known, but he couldn't get his campaign off the ground. The last 3 presidents did not win the New Hampshire primary. So we're not about picking the winner. We're about a good place to get started, which is why I use the spring training analogy.
The spring training analogy is good. I'll give that some thought. And it is definitely retail politics here. You can't get a decent cup of coffee because there's always a politician in the diner taking over the place. So what do you think is going to happen? Now, some of our people will be listening to our regular broadcast after the primary's over, so they know what you and I do not at this moment, which is the outcome of this primary. But our people watching live, what do you think? What do you think is going to happen tonight? Do you think there's going to be a setback for Hillary Clinton? You think the Republicans are going to pick a front runner? What do you think?
Well, I think the good news for our campaign as a Hillary supporter is that unlike 2008, she doesn't have to win here. I hope she will, but the polls are indicating, if they're right, they were wrong in 92, and they were sure as heck wrong in 2008 when they had her down 10 points and she won by 3. But if she can close the gap a bit and go on to states where she's likely to be stronger. Senator Sanders is from next door. Next door neighbors almost always win the New Hampshire primary. We've had 8 since 1960.
All right. Well, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm sure we could talk about much more, but Ambassador Terry Shumaker, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it.
I did too. Thank you, sir. And we will be right back after this. I'm Richard RJ Eskow, and this is the Zero Hour.
Great.